Section 30 of Lectures to Young People. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Lectures to Young People by William B. Sprague. Section 30. Doing Good, Galatians 6:10, Part 3. 3. I proceed to the third general division of the discourse, in which I am to suggest some directions for doing good. 1. In the first place, then, if you desire to accomplish the greatest amount of good, I would say, be careful to select a field adapted to your peculiar talents. This remark may apply in general to the choice of your calling for life, or it may apply more particularly to the special enterprises of benevolence in which you may engage. There are a great variety of stations and employments allotted to men, in any of which a true Christian, if otherwise fitted for them, cannot fail to be useful. But it is easy to conceive that a Christian with certain natural or acquired talents might be very useful in one station, when he would be little more than a cumberer of the ground in another. Hence, the vast importance of judiciously selecting your employments, of always occupying those places which you are fitted to occupy with the greatest advantage, of using those means for doing good which are likely in your hands to be most efficacious. It is true, indeed, that this is a subject on which you may not always be able to form the most correct opinion, for there is no kind of knowledge in which we are more apt to be deficient than the knowledge of our own character. But if you are prudent, you will not only look well into your own hearts, but will take counsel of judicious Christian friends, who will be able to judge with less partiality and probably more correctness. Entering a sphere of labor for which you are fitted, you may accomplish more in a short period than in other circumstances you could accomplish during a whole life. There is one common mistake connected with this subject to which I beg leave to advert for the sake of putting you on your guard against it, if perchance it should, with any of you, become a practical matter. I refer to the fact that young men, not unfrequently from conscientious considerations, leave a profession to which they have been trained and for which they are fitted, for one to which they have neither a natural nor acquired adaptation. Far be it from me to question that there may be cases in which a mechanic or a merchant or a lawyer may very properly resign the trade or the profession to which he has been educated, and even at a comparatively late period enter the gospel ministry. But I am constrained to offer it as my deliberate conviction that in the great majority of instances in which such a change takes place, it is not for the better, but for the worse, as it respects the amount of good ultimately accomplished. Admitting that the calling to which the individual is first devoted is honest and honorable, and one to which he has been regularly trained, he had, in all ordinary cases, better remain in it, for if he enter another, especially if he enter the gospel ministry, it will probably be with at best a hurried preparation, and in circumstances which give little promise of success. If you have found by experience that you can occupy one place to advantage, there is always some hazard in relinquishing it for another which you have not tried, of a very different character. And you misjudge altogether if you imagine that the Christian ministry opens the only extensive field of usefulness to a Christian, for it admits of no question that there are many good men who can be far more useful out of the ministry than in it. I do not decide that in a case like which I have supposed you ought not to change, but I say with confidence that you ought not to do it without much deliberation and prayer. 2. Another direction necessary to be observed if you will accomplish the greatest amount of good in your power is that, so far as may be, your whole time should be occupied in doing good. I should not be surprised if the query should arise in some of your minds whether this is indeed possible, whether it is not necessary from the very constitution of our nature that part of our time should be devoted to amusement. I answer, the constitution of our nature does require an occasional cessation from severe labor and an occasional change of employment. But it does not require that it should be a change from what is useful to what is useless or foolish. On the contrary, the whole purpose, the whole legitimate purpose of amusement is answered by a change from one useful employment to another, an employment which keeps you still doing good, though you are doing good in a different way. If you govern your conduct by this principle, you will find yourselves blessed with a far higher degree of activity both of mind and body, and will be far better fitted for the discharge of your ordinary duties than if you should yield yourselves up to absolute inaction or to what ordinarily passes with the world under the name of amusement. In this way, too, many of your precious moments which would otherwise be lost, and worse than lost, are improved to the benefit of your fellow men and the glory of God. 3. If you would do all the good in your power, reduce your various duties so far as possible to system. Every man of the world knows how necessary this is in the accomplishment of his purposes, and it is equally necessary for the man who, whatever he does, aims to do all to the glory of God. You ought to regard this as a matter of Christian obligation, not only in respect to whatever relates to your daily employment, but to your efforts for the promotion of particular objects of benevolence, and especially to your pecuniary contributions. Let the plan by which you are to regulate your whole conduct be formed in your closet. Let it be formed deliberately in the exercise of a spirit of prayer, with a deep sense of your Christian obligations, and in view of the retributions of the judgment. And that plan, reduced to practice, will, on the whole, bring a much larger amount of blessing in its train than any course of conduct which should be left to the control of accidental circumstances and occasional impulses. I do not say but that in the latter case you might sometimes do more and give more from the momentary impulse of excited feeling than in the former, but in the one case your influence would be like that of a summer shower, rattling soon over and not penetrating beyond the surface of the earth. In the other it would be like that of a steady rain, comparatively noiseless, but sinking deep into the earth and causing it to minister to the wants of man. Suffer me to say, my young friends, that if you intend ever to regulate your efforts in doing good by a regard to system, you cannot begin too early. I know not whether there be any one habit which is broken up with more difficulty than a habit of action which has no respect to order. And such a habit, persisted in for a few years, if we may judge from the analogy of experience, must be pronounced nearly incurable. As you desire, then, not only to do the greatest amount of good, but to do it with the greatest case and pleasure, I exhort you to lose no time in forming a habit of systematic action. 4. It is also important, in order that you may do the greatest good in your power, that your efforts should be proportioned to different objects according to their claims on your regard. Two objects may be equally important in themselves, and yet the one, from peculiar circumstances, may have a much stronger claim on your attention than the other. For instance, the members of your own family or the circle of your immediate friends have no doubt a stronger claim on your benevolent exertions than the inhabitants of Japan or Hindustan, not because the souls of your kindred or friends are more precious than the souls of these heathen, but because Providence has placed the former more immediately within the range of your influence. Not that you are to refuse your aid for the salvation of those who are afar off, for you have already seen that your field of operation is the world. Nevertheless, as a general rule, you are to regard those who are near you other things being equal, as having stronger claims than the more distant, on the principle to which I have just adverted. Of the various objects of real benevolence which are presented to you, I do not advise you to turn away from any which you have the ability to aid, but I exhort you to let the comparative aid which you render to each be a matter of reflection and prayer. An object in itself less important may sometimes, from peculiar circumstances, demand, for the time being, more of your aid than a more important one. But in general, the relative importance of the object in connection with the providential relation you sustain to it is to be the criterion by which you are to determine your duty. 5. I observe once more that if you would do the greatest amount of good in your power, you must watch for the most favorable seasons for action. You know how important this is to the merchant, and indeed to men of every profession. The improvement of a single opportunity, the taking advantage of a slight turn of circumstances, may be the hinge on which turns their fortune for life. Let not the children of this world, my young friends, be wiser in their generation than the children of light. Be always on the watch for opportunities of doing good, lest while your vigilance is suspended for an hour, some opportunity should escape you, which, by having been faithfully improved, might have secured the salvation of some immortal soul. Be ready at all times to speak a word in season for God. I say a word in season, for while I desire that you may be faithful on this subject, I would never have you disgust by being inappropriate and obtrusive, but a word fitly spoken, that is, spoken in the right time and in the right manner, the wise man has declared, is like apples of gold in pictures of silver. So also you may sometimes do incalculable good by a tract, and that too in circumstances in which you could do good in no other way, and who does not know that by this means a reproof has sometimes been brought home to the heart of the scoffer, which has melted him down into a penitent at the foot of the cross? In a word, let it be your object, while you are always engaged in doing good, to avail yourselves especially of those golden seasons which now and then occur, in which you may accomplish great good, perhaps in a single moment, opportunities which, if once suffered to pass, can never be recalled. 4. I have already dwelt at so great a length on this subject that I shall detain you but a few moments upon the last article, in which I am to consider the motives for doing good, though this of itself constitutes a subject so broad that instead of occupying a small part of a discourse, it might profitably occupy several discourses. 1. The first motive which I would present before you for doing good is that in this way only you answer the end of your existence. A moment's inspection of your intellectual and moral constitution shows that you are gifted with noble powers, powers which could have been bestowed only by the Almighty and all-wise God. The question arises, whence then were they bestowed? Was it that they might be perverted to purposes of rebellion and crime? Such an inquiry needs no reply. Was it then that they might merely answer the purposes of self-indulgence, or that they should remain in a state of indolent inaction? To admit this were not only absurd, but blasphemous. You need go to no higher teachers than reason and conscience to be assured that these noble powers were given you for benevolent action, and that when they are used in any other way or for any other purpose, they are perverted. Man was made for a far higher purpose than the beasts that perish, but if his faculties are employed in any other way than in doing good, he loses the place in creation which his Maker assigned him, and becomes worse than a blank in the works of God. I know that this is a motive which addresses itself to youth of every character, to those who utterly neglect religion, as well as to those who have entered on a religious life. but I am sure it applies in all its force to you who are professedly the disciples of Christ, for to say nothing of the fact that you may be deceived, it is certain that you bear about with you a body of sin, and hence are in danger of doing far less good than is actually within your power. And just in proportion as you come up short of this, you defeat the design for which your faculties, your very existence, were given you. As you desire then to answer in the highest degree the end for which God made you, and made you what you are in the scale of being, be always employed in doing good. 2. Another motive by which I would urge you to a life of active benevolence is that your destiny thereby becomes allied to that of the highest orders of creation. No doubt there are various ranks of being above us, as we know that there are various orders below us, and with the exception of the rebel angels who are confined in chains under darkness unto the judgment of the great day, all these superior orders of intelligence are engaged in a course of unceasing active benevolence. They breathe the pure atmosphere of heaven. They walk in the light of the Lamb. They execute the purposes of infinite wisdom and infinite love. They strike their golden harps to the praises of Jehovah. By a life of active benevolence, you become incorporated into the same family with them, and prepared for their communion and their joys. Nay, more, your destiny in some respects will be elevated above theirs, for the song of redemption you will raise to a higher and nobler note than they ever can. Is not here, then, a powerful motive to benevolent action, a consideration which should induce you not to be weary in well-doing? 3. By a life of active benevolence you are changed into the image of God from glory to glory. It is the most perfect epitome that was ever formed of the character of God, that He is love. It is His delightful and unceasing employment to do good. Everything in creation, everything in providence, everything in redemption proves it. Would you, then, bear the lineaments of His character, and do you desire that you may wear His image with increasing brightness? Then let me say, imitate His divine beneficence. Let it be the constant employment of your life to do good. This brings you towards the standard of infinite perfection, and while it makes you like God, it makes you a constant object of His complacence and blessing. End of section 30.